Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm very discouraged by this hearing and by the witnesses in particular that you have chosen to give a platform today. Instead of having a serious discussion, I'm sure we're going to hear conspiracy theories as this committee holds what amounts to basically a pep rally in support of President Trump's illegal power grab. I certainly agree with this committee that this committee should conduct rigorous oversight of federal spending, including wasteful foreign aid. That's certainly what we should be talking about. And we should always be working to sort out and eliminate waste and fraud in all federal programs. And in fact, this committee has done that for years on a bipartisan basis. It's a big part of what we do every week as we come together to consider legislation and deal with the tough issues that we face as a country. But today's hearing, I'm sure we're going to hear many of our colleagues on the other side of the dais, my Republican colleagues here, cheer on President Trump and his cronies, like Elon Musk, in their illegal and unconstitutional efforts to cut off foreign aid. And it is not only a sham, I think it really misses the point on what this administration is really doing and how far President Trump will go to hurt American families so that they can pay for tax cuts for billionaires. We can't have a real debate about wasteful spending when President Trump has empowered an unvetted billionaire, and let's say it, an unvetted billionaire with massive conflicts of interest, hundreds of millions of dollars of government contracts he receives. I would hope we will look at those hundreds of millions of dollars of government contracts from Elon Musk, as he's cutting off funding to programs that clearly the administration doesn't understand or they may not agree with politically. Let's be clear, the Constitution does not empower a social media billionaire with massive conflicts of interest that has never been vetted to decide on how taxpayer dollars are spent. In fact, the Constitution doesn't even empower President Trump to make these decisions. The Constitution gives Congress, and only Congress, the sole power to decide how taxpayer money is spent. And for the most part, we pass bipartisan laws to determine how that money should be spent. But President Trump has directed Elon Musk and many other cronies to ignore Congress, to ignore the Constitution, and recklessly and illegally cut off funding that Congress has passed according to the law. Not only is it illegal, not only is it unconstitutional, but President Trump's direction to shutter USAID will have damaging consequences across the globe and here in the United States. I'd like to enter into the record, Mr. Chairman, numerous statements from organizations and experts that detail those consequences.
Without objection.
That's why my Democratic colleagues and I are most concerned about what the agency, what federal programs is going to be next. Where are the dominoes going to fall after USAID? What's going to be next on the chopping block? We know President Trump has already directed his cronies to shut down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Will they halt Social Security payments that seniors count on next? Will they stop Medicare reimbursements and prevent seniors from accessing health care? Will they block disaster aid to states that have suffered from hurricanes and wildfires? Well, I'll tell you, President Trump and his cronies have already hinted on all of those resources that Americans count on, and more could be shut down going forward. And it's not just that it's illegal. It's not just that it violates the separation of powers. The bottom line is that these actions hurt American families, and it's our job to fight back. And that's why Democrats on our committee will be focused on that today. If this committee is seriously about defending American families and Congress's oversight role, a role, Mr. Chairman, that I know you have said over and over again as part of what we were going to be doing here at the committee, then the hearing we have today should be about examining blatantly illegal activities that President Trump has led to undermine the laws passed by Congress and to wreak havoc on the programs and services that support Americans. Mr. Chairman, I know you've often talked about how it's Congress versus the executive, whoever's in the executive office. That's what's happening right now. Let's hope we focus on that because we're seeing it in clearly happening. At President Trump's direction, Elon Musk and his minions have illegally cut off funding that Congress passed to support farmers. They've cut off funding to support childcare centers. They've cut off funding for life-saving cancer research. They've cut off funding for community health centers, cutting off funding for religious charities and services that Americans rely on every day. And it's all been under the guise of addressing waste. But if the administration is serious about combating waste and fraud, then the president would not have fired 18 inspector generals, the independent watchdogs who actually identify waste, fraud, and abuse. Why is Donald Trump firing the watchdogs to waste and abuse? If the president is truly serious about addressing waste and fraud and foreign aid, he certainly would not have fired the inspector general for the USAID. And let's remember, this isn't the first time a president has tested the limits of law when it comes to presidential powers. We've seen this movie before. But it's the first time that Republicans in Congress have simply rolled over and let a president seize power that the Constitution assigns to the legislative branch. We have the power of the purse, and I've heard the chairman talk about that many times in our meetings. But let's look at an example from history. In the 1970s, when President Richard Nixon refused to spend money appropriated for child care, job programs, environmental cleanup programs, and virtually every member of Congress from both parties rejected that, passed the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, which asserted Congress's constitutional power. And when it passed unanimously. Every Republican senator stood up to Richard Nixon and said, this is unacceptable. Now, clearly that was a time when we did not have feckless Republican senators, but it was a great time to look at how we came together to stand up to presidential power. And it wasn't just Congress. President Nixon lost in the courts over and over again. No judge ever endorsed President Nixon's argument that he had the right to ignore the laws of Congress. If President Trump thinks his actions are lawful, then his administration should come forward and be able to answer straightforward questions from Congress. They should operate in the light of day instead of trying to hide what they're doing from Congress, the courts, and independent watchdogs. Mr. Chairman, I was disappointed that over the last few weeks I've had a number of oversight letters that you refused to sign. I would hope that you'd reconsider, and I look forward to meeting with you to talk through those letters in the near future. And I think also, Mr. Chairman, many of the questions that we have today about the actions of President Trump that has been directed by Elon Musk, I think that's something that we should also call in Elon Musk to ask questions, particularly about his numerous and substantial conflicts of interest while he's making these kinds of decisions. And I hope that going forward, this committee will work to defend Congress's role and responsibilities under the law and conduct real, meaningful oversight of these lawless actions by the Trump administration.